When you think of Trails in the Sky the Third, what comes to mind? For me, it's the simple truth that Sky the Third is the most unique game in the series. It is the only game whose protagonist was the main character of that game and no other. It is the only game that has not taken place in Zemuria as we know it. And it is the only game to feature separate story episodes within its structure. Well, until we learn more about the 10th Kiseki game being currently developed that might be doing something similar. That aside, I'm of course referring to the star, moon, and sun doors that appear throughout Sky the Third. In total, there are 25 of these doors in the game, and they range from being short stories about the protagonist, to longer form stories that go more in depth, lore dumps about some of Zemuria's most important topics and mysteries, and even minigames and challenges just for fun and rewards. If you took away the content in these doors, Sky the Third would be a very short Trails game, both in terms of playtime and script size. The unique story told in Sky the Third centered around Kevin Graham, Ries Argent, and the Phantasma incident is certainly worth the price of admission. But the content inside the doors makes Sky the Third a standout game, and one that longtime fans have returned to time and again for fun, and to continue investigating just how much foreshadowing Falcom put in this incredibly lore-heavy, compact game. And since ranking videos are supposedly all the rage on this goddess-awful website, I thought I'd dust off my soapbox and give you my personal rankings for the game's doors. I'd like to preface this by saying, everything that follows is subject to change over time, and as new Trails games are released. One of the things I've held steadfast, and you've heard me say it time and again if you've seen the LP, is that Trails in the Sky the Third is a game that continues to get better with age, more so than any other game in the series in my opinion. Because oftentimes, we found that high-level concepts that appear in future games actually trace their origins back to things in Sky the Third. In the future, this could be a topic I'd like to revisit and make a sequel video to should things greatly change. But with that said, let me break down just how it is I'm weighing these doors against themselves. I don't think it should come as a shock to know that I play Trails mainly for storytelling and lore. So naturally, those are the kinds of doors I'm going to like the most. Nevertheless, I'll do my best to justify my ranking behind each door, and just what it is that makes each either stand out or fade into the background. Of course, feel free to let me know what you agree or disagree with, as well as what your personal favorite doors in the game are. Without further ado, here's how I rank all of Trails in the Sky the Third's doors through the first 3 arcs in the series. This is Estelle's fishing door, which is obviously my least favorite door in the entire game. I've never been one for fishing in JRPGs to begin with, but in the first 2 Trails arcs, fishing was particularly humdrum. There was never much to it outside of trying different rod and bait combinations. So a door with nothing but fishing? I think I'll pass, especially that last difficulty, or as I like to call it, RNG Gehenna. The one thing I really love about this door is the artwork of Estelle on the title screen. This freaking art is so dang cute, let me tell you. And the best part about it? Falcom used it to produce and sell packages of fish sausage, made from fish that Estelle allegedly caught herself at Comiket 92 in 2017. If I could buy this sausage and somehow eternally preserve it, I would. The Arena Sun door checks in this low for me just because of personal preference. I've never hid the fact that I don't play Trails for combat or challenge. I play for story, characters, and lore. With that said, there is actually one sort of interesting storytelling aspect about this door, but we'll get to that a bit later. Anyway, a door that's just combat challenges isn't going to appeal to me personally. Though I think for what it is, Falcom did do a good job of making the battles interesting and memorable, especially the final one. I'm sure if you really love these kinds of challenges, then this door will rank a lot higher for you. A bit more appealing to someone like me than a battle challenge, but still not quite my cup of tea. I think the biggest positive about this door is just how many levels of difficulty and questions there are, and trying to power through this door can actually teach you a thing or two you didn't know. It's kind of a reminder of just how much obscure information about Zemuria and the games there truly is, and why something like the Kiseki Wiki is so important. As a fan and advocate of the series' in-universe novels, anything that ties into them and gives them a greater importance is something that I can get behind. So, while we still don't know much about Jack and Hal, or if they are even real and waiting for us in the Eastern Quarter someday, it's still cool to see Gambler Jack be brought to life like this and the characters drawn. Who knows? Maybe their art is dead on accurate, and someday in the future we'll be comparing these old Trails in the Sky artworks to their in-game models and designs in the future Calvert games. Wholly irrelevant. For one, getting through this door is arduous even on New Game Plus, because of how much combat is required. Second, nothing is really that important in this door. The Ravens are now junior bracers. Big whoop. Will we ever see them again, not counting Akatsuki no Kiseki? I doubt it, but I suppose it's not impossible. I guess you get a little bit more out of Agate as a character, but it's nothing we don't already know about him from first and second chapter. I feel like this door was a reach on Falcom's behalf, unless, if, and only if, for whatever reason you became invested in the Ravens' character progression, starting from when they entered the tournament in Grand Cell at the end of first chapter. But if you didn't care in the first place, then this really doesn't do anything for you. Hearing how much of this game was cut out, it's kinda sad that this made the cut and other things didn't. I hate Blue Blanc. Second chapter really didn't do much to make me interested in Blue Blanc's backstory, unlike Walter, Luciola, Louvet, and Ren. In that respect, Blue Blanc's always been the outlier in the series in regards to Ouroboros Enforcers and Anguis. Enforcers are said to have some sort of darkness that makes the Grandmaster attracted to them, but up to this point in the series, we haven't really gotten a hint of that from Blue Blanc, nor does this door introduce us to it. This door also gets more underwhelming when Sun Door 5 confirms that the correct theory of those presented by the Imperial Chronicle isn't all that interesting. He was a poor petty thief who became a con artist because he wanted to sleep with a noblewoman? That's it? It doesn't tell us anything about how or why he may have joined the society, or where his fighting ability comes from. In a way, this door served to be just like all the quest lines he's caused in several games by stealing other people's property. A big waste of time. This door is well written and heartwarming, but not all that relevant. I think this door is also a bit reliant on understanding just how close Maybelle and Lila are. In other words, having experienced the Rainy quest in second chapter. It isn't too long and can be humorous, but if you're indoors to learn more about the main characters and lore, then this door is kind of just filler compared to some higher ranked ones. Although, I do like me some Maybelle and Lila, and I hope we get to see them again someday. Perhaps with matching wedding rings? Not a particularly interesting door, and it feels more like an introduction of what you can sort of expect from Star Doors, more than anything. Actually, I feel like this door should have been the mandatory tutorial door, instead of the overly long Moon Door 1. It does an okay job of fleshing out Julia and Mueller a bit more, and that's important seeing as they're both playable for almost the entire game this time around. If there's one truly fascinating takeaway from this door, it's the contrast between how Julia feels about her devotion to the royal family versus Mueller's birthright duty to the Imperial family and Olivier. This door is such a shame because it's the only one Zen is really relevant in, but it's more to do about Kilika than him. Not that there's anything inherently wrong with Kilika, but Zen was always the most overlooked party member in first and second chapter, so a really great door could have helped his character a lot, and ended the arc on a high note for him in people's eyes. Instead, we got this look into Kilika's struggles ever since her father's death, and this journey she's been on to find a proper place in the world. The value here is that with her going back to Calvard with Zen, we will undoubtedly see them again in the future. It's a nice call forward to the far-off Calvard arc, but how relevant either of them will be in those games, who's to say at this point? This is the only story-based store in the game that's divided into multiple parts, which I'm ranking as one whole. I definitely feel, though, that the second half is a lot more interesting than the first. My favorite thing about this door is the introduction of the Orbal gear, and the call forward that it will play a role in the series in the future. It's also cool to see Dan Russell wield his bow staff, and to find out he was the bracer who helped introduce Cassius to it back in the day. The other point here is to, I suppose, establish just what the dynamic between Erica and Agate is, but I think the prologue did a good enough job of that personally. It's entertaining, but does kinda get driven into the ground, and I can understand how it may overstay its welcome for some. It may also be worth noting Erica and Dan's encounters with Ouroboros while abroad, and the fact that those encounters would be concurrent with the events of 1st and 2nd chapter. At the moment, we really don't know where those encounters were or what they entail, so it's curious to wonder just what Ouroboros is doing continent-wide, even when we as players don't get to see it. This door is pretty cut and dry. There's a lot of tech jargon that goes into detail to just what it is that makes an archaism like Potter Modder tick. I suppose the curiosity here is you get an idea of just how advanced the 13 factories can be, but the door doesn't do anything to really subvert your expectations of that, given just how technologically advanced Ouroboros came off as in 2nd chapter. Also, unsurprisingly, you learn just how cruel their experiments can be as well, given the literal human costs it took to find a suitable operator for Potter Modder. I think the other value here is that it preps you for Star Door 15, as well as other relevant information that will be featured in the series shortly after the 3rd. This one is also fairly straightforward. There isn't much to say here, and the door really just reinforces what you should have already gathered about C. Epstein, the Epstein Foundation, and the Orbal Revolution from paying attention and doing your due diligence in 1st and 2nd chapter, like reading the information inside the Capua for one. This door doesn't really offer anything too revelatory about the Foundation itself, though it does name the other 2 Epstein disciples, G. Schmidt and L. Hamilton. This door also primers the Orbal net, which perhaps will be seen sometime shortly after Sky the Third. I think the real takeaway here is there's a lot of room for speculation about just who Epstein was, what the process of rediscovering Orbal energy was like, and how it is he died. Given the images in this door's documents, and what we've come to know about artifacts in the Septian Church over the course of this arc, it definitely raises some questions as to whether there's much more to this story from 50 years ago than the games are currently letting on to. This is the only Sun Door with any significant kind of story value. Also, I find it's the most fleshed out of all the minigames. What's really good about this door is you finally get some first-hand information about just how it was the Capuas went from Erebonia nobility to Sky Bandits. With the Erebonia arc on the horizon, it makes you think more about the Empire's class system and the structure around its nobility. Overall, it's a cool door that builds more than you would expect it to, but I think the downside is that it kinda makes me lament the fact that the other Sun Doors weren't nearly as involved as this one. The biggest reason this door isn't higher in the rankings for me is that it's kind of long, and large portions of it are superfluous. I really don't find most of what deals with Chloe, her trying to become a stronger person while at Genis, or her relationship with Jill to be all that interesting. That isn't to disparage Chloe as a character, I just think it comes off as a bit redundant after what her character went through in 2nd chapter. We already know how strong and resolved Chloe can be, because we saw her go through the process of becoming the crown princess. So going back to this earlier part of her character development, which we weren't around to see as Estelle and Joshua, just feels unnecessary and almost deconstructive. What's far more interesting is the debuts of Lecter, Lucy, and Leo, and the establishment of the kind of relationship Chloe had with Lecter before he suddenly dropped out of Genis. Unfortunately, when you really step back and look at this door as a whole, as good as that content is, it makes up a rather small portion of the door's actual runtime, hence why I don't rate the door very highly. This isn't an overly eventful door, but one that is a pleasant read and at the very least ties up a couple of loose ends. For one, it's nice to finally see Chloe get closure on her feelings for Joshua. I mean sure, as players it's plain as day that there would never be anything between the two, given Estelle and Joshua's romance is the driving force behind the first two games. Yet still, dating back to Chapter 2 of Sky FC, Chloe's latent feelings for Joshua have always been an aspect of her character. It's also good to see just where Joshua's frame of mind was after the events of second chapter, and what it was that led to him and Estelle deciding to leave Liberl to go on their journey. It's a fun wind-down door, especially if you came to the third immediately or shortly after having finished second chapter. Plus, new issue of the Liberl News. And then you have this door, which directly ties into Star Door 13, and may as well be its sequel, in a way. In terms of story and world building, it really isn't all that important. This door, more than most, comes off as fan service. Want to know what Estelle and Joshua were like growing up together before first chapter? Well, here you go. And what's nice is that this door's events are on the heels of the very first scene in the series. I guess in some ways, this door is a lot like Moon Door 3, which I criticize more harshly, but it really does come down to personal preference. Talk about Chloe's character and her relationship with Jill? Nah. Babby, Estelle and Joshua fan service and Estelle catching this big ass beetle? That's what I'm talking about. Plus you get to tear up at the whereabouts of light one more time, and see when Estelle and Joshua flew out of Relent to start their journey. Good stuff. This is a solid lore door, but the format does make it a little confusing. It helps to remember Campanella's debut in second chapter, and his mention of Jester and what happened in Erebonia. Though not fair to people playing this series in order, this door is also a lot more understandable if you've played Cold Steel 1, and have seen firsthand how absent the guild is across the Empire. This door isn't overly important, in my opinion, but it does kind of feel like the last piece of a puzzle that had been 95% assembled over the course of first and second chapter. It also reminds you just how much of a Gary Sue Cassius is, and that the Imperial government isn't trustworthy at this point in time. I really like this door because it's easily the most spotlight Annalise has ever given in the arc, and I'm rather fond of Annalise as a character. But it's not just her that gets fleshed out. Cassius and Richard also get more character development, and the entire 8-Leaf school as a whole is more fleshed out thanks to this door, a concept not going away anytime soon. This is also the first mention of the school's founder and Annalise's grandfather, Yunka Fai, whom we may go on to meet someday. It's not a long door, but very enjoyable. In some ways, I feel like this door is the perfect example of what makes a good story door in this game. Once again, this door may as well be a sequel to the last door in the rankings. For one, I think this door, paired with Cassius' boss fight, is just a nice cap to Richard as a character and the redemption story he's been on since second chapter. I really like the concept of RNA research, what it does for him and Almathea, and what it leaves open in the future for the series. I also think the scene of Richard in the rain with one of his former intelligence division men is just impeccably written. A lot like Star Door 5, this is just a stellar story door that's not too long or too short. Great stuff. What's really unique about this door is just how much free roam you get of Grand Cell, and how interesting a lot of the missable content in the door actually is. You also get to roam Zeiss with Agate in the second half of Moondoor 1, but I never found anything all that intriguing by doing so. This door, however, has a lot going on thanks in part to it occurring years before the start of the arc itself. You can see young Dorothy. You can get an optional conversation with Cassius, which has some interesting implications for future topics in the series. You can even meet a couple of NPCs that, as far as the Liberl arc goes, only appear in Sky the Third, such as Wilma from the Grand Cell History Museum and Nielsen, who also appeared aboard the Lusitania. But all of that aside, this door is really good in and of itself when it comes to Shera's character. Shera's gotten a lot of development since second chapter, thanks to the introduction of Luciola to the story. But we never did really learn much about her life before being taken into the Harvey Troop. It's good to learn just where it was she came from at the beginning of her life, but for me, it also begs the question of Shera's nationality. And if you chose to make her your traveling partner at the start of second chapter, Rin commented on her dark skin, and being from the South during chapter 3 of that game. The Trails nerd in me can't help but wonder where the events of her flashback scene in this door were taking place. And finally, this door is fun to experience knowing where Shera gets to go as a person, and how far her life as a bracer has taken her. If I had made this video 6 months ago, I probably would have ranked this door about 15 spots lower than I currently am. This just goes to show that these rankings are subject to change year to year, based on new games coming out, new interviews, or anything that might add to my knowledge of the series. Because, as I've said several times, Sky the Third is a game that continues to get better with age. This door, when you first come across it, is a confusing mess. Even now, I still don't know what to make of the fact that Mary somehow met a baby dragon in the Crone Pass that looks suspiciously like Ragnard? And the dragon is never given a name. Well, not in the door anyway. You can actually battle this creature on the second difficulty level of Sundoor 3. It just so happens that in that battle he's called Tiny Ragnard, and is described as being a young dragon that resembles Ragnard. So either it's the same species as Ragnard, how that works and whether there are multiple of these things mating somewhere, I don't know, don't ask me. Or, the alternative, and something fans have speculated, is that it is Ragnard. But how? Did Mary somehow travel back in time when she got lost? Was it all just a hallucination of some kind? If you save while wandering the Crone Pass with the dragon, the save file will note its location as Illusion World. Does that mean none of what happened was real? Who knows? But the real reason there seems to be something greater going on with this door is whatever the happiness stone itself is. Now if this dragon really is Ragnard, there could be some sort of connection between the stone and the Gordias-Septium he produced back in second chapter. Though if the two are the same, you'd think people would be able to identify this stone as unrefined Gordias-Septium. What really makes this door intriguing though, is that there have been very subtle allusions to the happiness stone in the Crossbell and Erebonia arcs, which further drags into question what it actually is. Trails really doesn't do anything by mistake. There are no coincidences in Kiseki, as the saying goes. Certainly I could go on and on with Kiseki crack theories about what the stone could be, and how it could be related to the yet-to-be-discovered Septirian of Time, but let's stick to just what we know for sure, which really isn't a lot. So the fact this door continues to be alluded to means there's something we're going to learn about this stone, and just what it was that happened in Moondoor 5, eventually. Just the prospect of that, and knowing how these things usually go as a Trails fan, greatly increases the value of this door in my mind, and shoots it up the rankings. I can't wait for the day we have these questions answered. Speaking of waiting to get questions answered, that was the entire theme around the nature of the infamous Salt Pail introduced in Stardoor 2. The Salt Pail is one of the greatest mysteries ever laid at the feet of players in this series, and has always had a unique air of mystery around it. The nature of the continent and its mysteries are deeply tied to the core of the series, and are the kind of thing that get fans like me coming back to these games again and again. Like many things in Sky the Third, as time has passed and our understanding of just what the Salt Pail was has increased, the fascination of this door and its value to the game has only gone up as well. Truly, Star Door 2 is a shining example of what makes Sky the Third a fascinating and worthwhile experience. I love this door because, unlike most, this one isn't the least bit shy about the fact it's calling its shot for future games. Many of the doors do eventually tie into later games, and I'm sure there are even more tie-ins to come as more games and arcs are released. But this one basically did the Babe Ruth point to the stands pose. You know unquestionably that this door is foreshadowing the Erebonia arc, but you may just see connections to it in the Crossbell arc as well. Osborn's on-screen debut honestly couldn't be more perfect. He is instantly established as a character you love to hate. He's so arrogant and foreboding that he even manages to get under the skin of the series' most carefree and lovable character. Why this door is so cool is plain as day. Now we enter the Elite Door status. Star Door 15 doesn't need much explanation. You've either seen it and understood perfectly why this door is significant, or you haven't. The reason this door ranks so highly is simply the writing quality, and Falcom's boldness to include this in the story. It's a delicate subject that takes a lot of skill to successfully write, but I think Falcom, as well as the localization's sole editor, pulled it off masterfully. After all, the subject matter of this door is so sensitive, and Sony wouldn't allow the first half of the door to appear on any of the 3 PlayStation ports that came out in Japan. The successful execution of this door adds so much to Rin as a character that it's hard to put into words. Rin, in second chapter, can at times come off as a nuisance. She's a spoiled brat and almost a caricature in that game, an evil little girl with a scythe, mech, and murderous streak. Yeah, okay JRPG. It's easy to say this character has a troubled past, and you should be invested in them. It's another thing to successfully write it and earn that investment. This door, this game's ending, and what happens a little further down the line, all of it makes Rin one of the most sympathetic, well-written, and beloved characters in the series. But I don't think any of what follows about Rin would hit nearly as hard as it does, if not for Star Door 15. The top door, and for many years the most honest and profound scene in this series. Star Door 14 is, more or less, the event that explains the structure of Trails, why the series is as large as it is, and why every game truly is a part of a greater whole. I honestly feel like you can't truly say you get this series until you've gone through this arc from the very beginning and worked your way to this moment the hard way. In this story, you're given the very unsurprising piece of news that the Ariel didn't actually disappear at the end of second chapter, that Campanella successfully retrieved it and returned it to the Society. But the real catch here is that this is the scene that debuts the other 6 Anguists, though their identities are for the most part hidden. Players of the Evolution version, or those using a mod that adds the Evo Japanese voice acting, also get the benefit of having this door fully voiced, thus giving greater insight into the identities of these Anguists, and even the Society's Grandmaster herself. Yes, herself. If you didn't know by this point in the series, now would be a good time to learn that the Grandmaster is a woman.
みんな揃っているようですね。
は第3中を除きまして全員揃いましてございます。
ご苦労。カンパネルラも我が代理としての見届け役、大義でありました。恐れ入ります。
The name of this door is Phantasmal Blaze, which of course is the second phase of the Orpheus Final Plan. The Orpheus Final Plan may as well be the core of Trails itself. All we do know is that the Gospel Plan was the first phase, Phantasmal Blaze is the second, and that it probably has something to do with the Septerians. Speaking of which, there's a line near the end of the door, delivered by the Grand Master no less, that's very interesting. It says, "The bells in the west have rang, and the first pact applies no more." This is presumably referring to the pact that Ragnar had with Adios to watch over the Ariel until some sort of answer toward it could be delivered by mankind, which Ragnar says has been done at the end of second chapter. I wonder why it's specifically called the First Pact. Is it simply because it's the first pact like this that Ouroboros has tried to dissolve within the scope of the Orpheus final plan? Or could it have truly been the first pact of its kind forged with Adios in regard to the Septarians, however many centuries or millennia ago? And better yet, why is it that the contract coming to an end is even noteworthy to Ouroboros to begin with? Is the true aim of the Orpheus final plan to dissolve each and every pact around the Septarians? This door is fascinating. It's the sweet, delicious Trails cocaine we all know and love. It's what opened my eyes to the series as a whole, and made me understand just how impossibly huge and ambitious what Falcom is attempting truly is. It's the best store in the game, and it's one of the best moments in the entire series. Long live Star Door 14. And there you have it, all 25 doors ranked 12 years after the release of Sky the Third. In the process of writing this video and researching the doors, I came to remember just how well Falcom set up the next 6 games in this series through the third alone. Much of this game's purpose, both inside the doors and out, is to set the stage for the Phantasmal Blaze Plan, the events of the Crossbell and Erebonia arcs. So much so that the last new thing you can do before heading to Phantasmagoria to finish the game is learn of the Phantasmal Blaze Plan by name. And while I do still think games beyond the Erebonia arc will have tiebacks to Sky the Third, there's still the whole Mundor 5 conspiracy to solve. I don't think Sky the Third will be returned to nearly as much as it was during the Crossbell and Erebonia arcs. Which brings us back around to the currently in development 10th Trails game. I could certainly be wrong, and in which case the end of this video would age very poorly. However, at the time of producing this, it definitely seems as though Falcom is looking to develop another Trails in the Sky the Third. Hence why some fans are jokingly referring to that yet-to-be-titled game as Sin the Fifth. If that proves to be the case, then I would look to that next game to not only tie up loose ends that Falcom couldn't get to in Trails of Cold Steel 4, but to also plant more seeds for the third phase in this series than we could possibly know of at the time of that game's release. I hope that happens. Sky the Third has been a fascinating game to look back on in retrospect, and watch age like fine wine. It would be a wonderful thing to see another game in the series do just the same.